Hello, and welcome to our special Law Day 2024 panel discussion hosted by the Riverside County Law Library. My name is Andrea Valencia, and I am the User Experience Librarian at the Riverside County Law Library. I am honored to oversee this panel discussion as moderator. Over the years, we have commemorated this day with various events and activities, each aimed at fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation of the rule of law in our society. From educational seminars to community outreach initiatives, we have sought to uphold the principles of justice and equality that lie at the heart of Law Day. From the American Bar Association's website, the 2024 Law Day theme, Voices of Democracy, recognizes that in democracies, the people rule. For nearly 250 years, Americans have expressed their political views and wishes by speaking their minds and voting in elections. In 2024, the United States will hold its 60th presidential election, and Americans will address fundamental questions about democracy and the rule of law. Before we delve into the enriching dialogue that awaits, allow me to please introduce our distinguished keynote speaker, the Honorable Jackson Luckey. Jackson Luckey served 13 years as a judge with the Riverside County Superior Court. Before becoming a judge, he was a Riverside County Deputy District Attorney. He now works as a mediator and arbitrator for JAMS ADR. In recent years, he served as president of RCLL's Library Board of Trustees. Luckey received his BFA at DePaul University and his JD from Southwestern Law School, where he graduated magna cum laude. Luckey is the first Korean American and first AAPI judge in Riverside County and was recognized in 2013 with the Trailblazer Award from the Asian Pacific Americans Lawyers of the Inland Empire. He is passionate about technology and education as seen through his various associations with UCLA Law School Trial Advocacy in 2021, Judicial Mentor for Apolli 2013 to 2021, Riverside County High School Mock Trial Steering Committee from 2009 to 2013, and North High School Protective Service Academy 2011 to 2015, and the Riverside RUG and Django Inland Empire computer program groups from 2014 to 2015. Please give a warm welcome to the Honorable Jackson Luckey.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Riverside County Law Library for hosting this amazing forum. I think what I want to start off with is talking about what a great program this is, in that it is a combination of our national policy and politics through the American Bar Association and National Law Day, in particular, Voices of Democracy this year, 2024, and the way that it's implemented locally by our local law libraries and our local communities in bringing meaning to what Law Day is, to what the rule of law means for the United States and Americans and people who live in the United States and enjoy those protections, whether they are citizens or non-citizens. And what the Riverside County Law Library brings to this national discussion is a focus on local issues. For those people who don't go to the law library in their county all that frequently, I think it bears discussion as to what kind of service the law library provides. For lawyers who need access to reference materials, the law library provides a valuable service. But a lot of lawyers have training, have been to law school, have learned how to do legal research, and have the wherewithal and the knowledge to do those things on their own. On the other hand, when it comes to people who find themselves in legal disputes, who don't have representation, either because they don't have the means to afford a lawyer or because they've been unable to find a lawyer who's willing to take on their case, the law library provides an amazing service, and that is access to the law that applies to their lawsuit and the law that will be applied to cases all over the country, and most importantly, in their local courts. And so when we look at the law library, the law library is the boots on the ground for our community and the people who need legal services in our community who can't necessarily afford or find a lawyer who's going to represent their interests. And that's why I think this is a pretty incredible forum for us to be speaking in today, because what it does is it gives us a chance to bring our local voice to that national conversation. I'll say a little bit of an aside. Where we are in Riverside County as part of California's Inland Empire, and if you're watching this video and you're unfamiliar with it, the Inland Empire is one of the largest areas in the state of California. It's a couple of counties, but it covers about 30,000 square miles, which is bigger than many states. And this area, Riverside County, makes up the southern part of what we call the Inland Empire, hosts about 5 million people population-wise, a little under that, 4.5 to 5 million people as of 2024, and has a huge geographic coverage. And so when we talk about people being involved in processes like democracy and the court system, some of them have to travel a long way. Some of them don't have a courthouse that's closer than a few hours away. And it falls upon the law libraries to provide these people some guidance, not legal advice, but guidance on how to navigate what is a pretty complex system. So how does that apply to voices of democracy today? Well, I think that what we want to do is take a cue from our local law library and the dealing with people in our community who have problems and think about how that plays out in our democracy. We can see all the time on the news the national issues, the presidential election, the crises that we have as a nation, the issues that we have as a nation that affect us on a grand scale. But when it comes to things like how do we deal with our neighbors? What kind of protections do we have in place for the smaller things? Whether we are allowed to go to a park at a particular time, whether we are allowed to have a demonstration on a particular day at a particular place. Those are things that really come down to local governance. It's going to be our cities and our counties, our municipalities that give us access to have that kind of voice. And it's our participation in local elections that has a meaningful effect. Because a lot of people feel, and I think incorrectly, but they do feel that, well, when I vote in a national election, I am one voice among millions. But when you vote in a local election, you're one voice among hundreds, maybe thousands, and maybe millions. And there are plenty of local elections where it has come down to single-digit votes, sometimes even a single vote, that decides who gets elected, or what policies are put into place, or what measures pass, or what bonds fund particular activities within a community. And so it's that local participation that really makes the difference on our day-to-day democracy and how we get to live our lives. So I think that brings me to the real message that we're sending through the ABA and the Riverside County Law Library, which is you want to get out there and vote. You want to get out there and participate. Because if you feel that your voice isn't loud enough to be heard nationally, number one, I think you're probably wrong. But number two, it's definitely loud enough to be heard locally. And I am privileged to be joined by a number of our local young lawyers who kind of put their money where their mouth is when it comes to local participation, because you're going to find that these are relatively young. When we talk about lawyers, we're old people. So we're always talking about young people being in their 20s and 30s, which may not be young to everybody who's watching. But they are people who are engaged. And what I mean by engaged is two things. Number one, getting out there and voting. And number two is getting out there and doing something. And what you're going to find from each of our panelists today is that they are young lawyers who spend their time not only representing their clients and making a living for themselves, but they're in our community, working with people who vote, voting themselves, and volunteering their time, their effort, and their money to make a difference on a local level in our community. And so I hope that you stay with us for a while to hear these voices. They're incredible people, and I think you're going to get some great information. Andy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Judge Lucky. Let us extend our deepest gratitude to Jackson Lucky for his inspiring words, which reminds us of the profound significance of Law Day and the enduring principles it represents. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists, each bringing their unique perspectives and expertise to the table. Joining us today, first we have Alejandra Barraza, a criminal defense lawyer and immigration attorney at Empire Law Incorporated. Alejandro handles all types of criminal defense cases with specialty in defending those with mental health diagnoses, veterans, and non-citizens. With respect to immigration, he helps individuals navigate through our complex and ever-changing immigration system, representing individuals seeking lawful status through family petitions, U-Visa, special immigrant, juvenile status, post-conviction relief, and other avenues. Alejandro grew up in Anaheim, California, and received his BA from UC Irvine and JD from the University of Colorado Boulder.
Thank you.
Also with us today is Nolan Kistler from the Law Office of Harlan B. Kistler, a new attorney who has been practicing for almost 1 year in the field of personal injury. Nolan is a Riverside native, graduating from Martin Luther King High School and California Baptist University. A recent highlight of his has been joining the RCBA Barristers, an activity of the RCBA made up of several new and young attorneys who meet up outside of their busy work schedules for happy hours, community service events, and other local Riverside events.
Thank you for the introduction, Andrea.
And lastly, we are honored to have Daniela Pebbles Tovar Jalalian join us. Daniela is a passionate attorney who works alongside her father, specializing in family law and estate planning. Born and raised in the Inland Empire, Daniela's Mexican roots and bilingualism enable her to connect deeply with her clients. She finds great fulfillment in guiding individuals through difficult decisions with empathy and compassion. Outside of her legal practice, Daniela enjoys spending time with her husband and engaging in community activities, including her involvement with the RCBA Barristers.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of the Riverside County Law Library, a big thank you to our panelists. Now, if we are ready to begin, I have a question for you all. Let's begin with our first question. And this question is open to everyone. What inspired you to pursue a legal career?
I can start out. So I've always been pretty set to becoming an attorney. But it was a selfish spark to want to help others and be part of something that was bigger than myself and be part of something that I could give myself. When I was at UC Irvine, my major was Crim Law Society. And having that major, I was able to learn about these fascinating, iconic people such as like Harvey Milk, MLK, and other civil rights leaders. And we have these individuals that just gave all of themselves to a cause and all of themselves for for the betterment of society and the betterment of their communities. So that's something that I saw them, and it was a trait that I wanted to emulate. Also, my forever spark is my mom. My mom worked 2 jobs, and I rarely saw her. She went in the morning as a lunch lady, then came home, cooked, and then left at 3 to a elderly home. So I wanted to be an attorney so I could help others, so that what she did for me and the sacrifices she made for me would be forever felt, not just within me, but in the people that I helped out.
Yeah, my reason for getting into law is pretty similar to Alex. Definitely some differences, but I think primarily just gratefulness. The school I grew up in, throughout high school, throughout college, I just felt as though I had many opportunities in this community, and I wanted to give back in any way I could. I worked as a wrestling coach at Martin Luther King. I sucked at that, but I had other jobs along the way. And the only thing I was really good at was being a law clerk. So kind of decided to go to law school because I wanted to do something that I actually had some yeah, I had some potential in. And after law school, got my degree and wanted to give back in any way I can. And just like Alex said, I think the legal career is very special in that you can give back so much, you can serve your community. And the infrastructure I had is probably largely due to local elections, voting, and also legal services that stand up for the rights of those in our community. So kind of, I think, is overwrapped in a sense of gratefulness that I've been given a lot, and the only thing I can do, because I feel overwhelmed in gratefulness, is give something back and hopefully give back as much as I possibly can. So that was really the decision for me.
Thank you, Nolan.
Okay. Gosh, that's hard to follow up, but I wouldn't even know where to begin. But my dad, growing up, he's an attorney, and so I always was in his shadow, and I was able to observe that there was a great need for attorneys, especially Spanish-speaking attorneys. And I remember the exact moment, if I had to pinpoint it, I was 13 years old, and my dad said, "Hey, I want you to interview a client." I stepped in, I said, okay, just doing this intake. And this lady, Spanish speaker, told me she didn't understand the law. She didn't know her rights. She explained that she was married to a man that was so controlling, he wouldn't even let her buy a pair of underwear. So she had to learn to sew her own underwear. And I remember walking out of that interview and just crying to my dad and saying, can she move into our house? I mean, can we do something for this elderly lady? Like, how could anyone be married to such a monster? And I think that just fueled the flame of justice in me. And so as a result of that, I did everything in my power to pursue being this zealous advocate, especially for my Spanish speaking community, that majority of the time they don't obviously understand the language, but they don't understand their rights. And so I think that is so pivotal. And I am just so honored to have the privilege to be a beacon of justice for them and to be the representative.
Thank you for sharing that, Danielle. That's a very nice, inspiring story.
Thank you.
And Andy, if I can throw in, because I will tell you, as I listen to these people who are so much younger than I am struck by how noble their intentions are. And I want to let those of us who are slackers when we are younger off the hook, because I didn't grow up thinking that I was going to be a lawyer. I did not have grand plans on being a lawyer. And it really was a process for me as I went through college. And then even when I went to law school, I didn't think I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to do something else that a legal background was going to help with. And it was through the process of being in law school that I kind of caught the bug of wanting to represent people and do what I thought was helpful for society. And so for those of you who think, I don't know that I have the spark that some of these younger lawyers have, trust me, you can get it later and it can work out just fine too.
Very, very true. Thank you all for sharing your inspiration. I agree that having noble intentions, but also kind of accidentally falling into law is something that everyone can relate to. Our next question is, growing up, what was your perspective on democracy? What was your experience with democracy? And how has that perspective changed now that you are a legal professional? I would love if Alejandro could provide his perspective on this question.
So it's funny, when I saw that question, it literally brought me back to the Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law. And it's such a cute video because it starts out with the bill hanging out on the steps. And then a young boy comes over and he's like, oh, this is how you become a law. It's an idea. And then they call their congressman, and somehow this guy picks up on the first call. And then he literally turns over and starts writing the law, which is not how it happened. But so that was my idea of democracy. It was linear. It was simple. It was something that it may take some time, but in 30 seconds you have law. So that's how it was. But when I became an attorney, I learned that it was not simple. It was not easy. It took lots of time to for a law to pass, and it isn't that. And I learned that democracy could hurt. And when I say that, I mean, as a legal professional, as a criminal defense attorney, we're working with new laws. For example, the most recent law, one of the most recent laws being mental health diversion, in which it's targeted for young men and women, or just men and women with mental health disorders. And when I look back and see that video, I'm like, as a law is being passed and as a law is being litigated, we have John Doe who's sitting in a jail cell, and John Doe's parents are at home, and Miss Johnson is up in Sacramento arguing about a bill that's that is relying on statistics by a doctor who's by doing all these studies. So for me, as a legal professional now, I know that a democracy or a passing of a bill or making a change takes time. And during that time, people are hurt or people are waiting. So as someone on this end of the spectrum, it's it's difficult to see, but at the end of the day, there is progress.
Thank you for sharing that. Daniela, would you happen to have a perspective on this?
Yes, I would. Growing up, I just thought the same as Alex, right? Where democracy just seems very stable, and it seems like it adapts with the times, right? Or so I thought. And now, as a legal professional, I see that yes, sometimes the laws change, and sometimes they adapt with the times, and sometimes they revert back, right? I mean, the fact that it's 2024, and as a woman myself, we are now being reverting back to fighting for reproductive rights, right? And so I think it's ever changing, and that is why we are a democracy, right? It is for the people, by the people. And that's why I think it's so important to really get out there and make your voice heard if you want to be the change, right? If you want for the law to progress rather than regress.
Yes, definitely. I definitely resonate with your comment of be the change. When you're in high school and you're growing up, you kind of think that, with enough passion and with enough energy, things can happen almost immediately, just like Schoolhouse Rock, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think at a pretty early age, I remember being very appreciative of the idea of democracy. I like the fact that, at least the way it was explained to me, was that the decisions of the government were made by the people, and that there wasn't this sort of buildup of power solely in the hands of one agency or one source, but that it was the people collectively making decisions. And I think for me, it's the same reason why communications work. If you want advice, talk to your mentors, talk to your family, talk to your friends. And why does that advice work? It's because it brings perspective, in a sort of similar way. Maybe it's not completely parallel to this, but I think that's why democracy is important. Every citizen has a unique experience and perspective. We've heard of Alex's experiences, and we've heard of different perspectives that can change my own perspective. Daniela has her own perspective, and I think that democracy is powerful in that way because the government, their decision making to some extent, depends on the voice of the people. So I think that that's very powerful. And in short, I was just very grateful of the idea of democracy, and still grateful of that idea of democracy, because perspective matters so much. And I think a government that considers the perspective of its everyday citizens is a good one. And as Andy mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities to engage in local elections, and I think that's a very good start. And as Judge Lucky mentioned, you may feel as though your voice is not powerful on a federal level, but you can speak to your local district representatives, and in fact, they likely want to speak to you because the turnover for elections is much more frequent than most federal elections. So there is a very big opportunity to make some change and take advantage of this system of democracy that we have.
Thank you, Nolan. Our next question is a little bit of a thinker. But how do you feel, or how do isolated or marginalized communities engage in democracy?
I'll start off with this one because I want to tell the story of my court, the Riverside Superior Court, and also what I call our sister court, the San Bernardino Superior Court. When I started as a judge around 2008 was when I started, and we were in a budget crisis in the state of California. And our court and many other courts were heavily impacted. We had to furlough people. We were operating on skeleton crews. We were closing down courthouses all over the place. And in the Inland Empire, we were uniquely affected, and I'll take San Bernardino County as an example. They had to close down their Needles courthouse because of the budget, which meant that if you needed to go to court in Needles, you had to take a 3.5-hour drive to Barstow and then a 3.5-hour drive back home. To give you some perspective, if you're familiar with the state of California, that's like driving from Sacramento to San Diego, the middle of the state to the bottom of the state, spending 7 hours in a car round trip to prosecute a lawsuit or to defend a lawsuit. So when we talk about access to justice, that is just a tremendous burden to bear as a citizen. So I can tell you, it took a long time, but the state of California eventually listened. And recently, it's now 2024 as I'm saying this, but we have reached almost 100% funding for our Inland Empire courts in Riverside and San Bernardino County. And we are starting to open up courthouses like Needles again so that people have access to justice. And so it's taken us a while, and it's taken a lot of talking, and it's taken a lot of work by a lot of people, lawyers, judges, legislators, executives, to get us here. But I'm optimistic because, yes, did it take too long in our opinion? Of course it did. But did we get there? Yeah, we did. And so we're going to take steps back as a democracy. We're going to take steps back when it comes to treating people equally and fairly. But I am firmly convinced that as long as we're participating and voting and getting our voices out there, eventually we can make change. And eventually it may even be the change that we want if we take the long view.
So that reminds me of I had a veteran. He was a Vietnam veteran. And one of a really sweet guy, but at first he was extremely just cold. He lived in a house in the middle of the desert, no neighbors. He was as isolated as you could be. But I represented him, and within 2 years we became great friends. And even after I represented him, he called me like last year just to say hi. And it was big for this guy. He just didn't have very many friends. So when I see this question, it kind of makes me think like, how would I get him to engage in our democracy? And for me, it's how I got him to like me was to show him that I cared. I cared about him as a person. And for us to, in my opinion, we need to have these isolated or marginalized communities understand that fundamentally they are essential. And fundamentally, we want them engaged. We want you to be part of this. as much as for the past 15, 20 years, if you were in the middle of the desert and you felt like nobody cared, this is the moment that we want to tell you, we want you here. We want you at the table. And it took a long time with this guy because he did not trust me at all. He did not believe in the government. He did not believe in me. He was mad. He was even coming to a courtroom. I had to call him the day before and beg him to come. And then eventually he was like asking to go out to lunch with me. So it was, I think with these communities, if we show them we care, and it's just not or lip work, we genuinely care. And it just takes one person. So if we could show them we care and we could show them we want them at the table, I think that's one step. And as Judge Lucky says, like, it may take 20 years from now, but making that kind of difference is worth it.
And just to piggyback off of what Alex said, I had a similar case. I had someone call in for a consultation just last week, actually. And believe it or not, she was from Egypt and she had this very complex divorce case. And she said, I had this judge originally, and this judge was great. But then I sat in because my case got transferred to another judge. This judge was not great. And I said, well, you know what? If you want to see the change, then you need to get out there and you need to vote, because ultimately the judges that are put on the bench are as a result of voting, right? And so people think, oh, like we said, my one vote is not going to make a difference, but guess what? It is, and it affects your everyday life. Because hey, had you gotten with a judge that was maybe more pro you, then your outcome would have been different than a judge that's not. So I think it's very important to educate these marginalized communities.
I have to agree with Daniela. I think as attorneys, we are in a very specific situation where we do have some insight on the law, and we, to some extent, are somewhat accountable to share our insight. I work in the insurance industry, personal injury. Some of my clients, whether they can't afford it or they just don't know the importance of having underinsured motorist insurance, they're in a very, very bad wreck. The other driver didn't have insurance and they don't have insurance. And simply just, I think, a lot of my clients aren't even aware of the value of that. They don't know what that even is. And if they knew that it really doesn't raise your premium, having that type of insurance or things like that, that's just one example of information that's pretty useful, pretty practical, and could be one conversation. But I think just doing us as attorneys, just sharing that information, doing things like this where we're able to communicate that to the community is a big step.
Thank you, everyone. Kind of following that, when we think of things that the general public just expects out of democracy, right? The right to vote, the freedom of speech, these democratic ideals that we all have grown up with, right? What can ordinary members of our community, who are both legal professionals and not, do to ensure that these democratic ideals continue?
Well, I would say it's about representation, right? So for me, I am so blessed to be a part of the 2% of Latino lawyers. And I think it's very important to have the representation for these marginalized communities, right? And to show other women, and especially women that are the minority, to say, hey, look, one of us made it. And just like that, we can all make it. There's room for all of us. And I think that's how we uphold democracy, is giving all of us a chance. And I think that's why, especially here in California, we are such a melting pot. So.
Judge Lucky touched on this in his first statement. He made the point that the local elections, or maybe school board elections, mayor elections, city council elections, these elections probably have a much greater impact on citizens of the Inland Empire and our local community than possibly national elections do. These are people making decisions about our local schools, that our families attend, the hospitals we treat at, the local libraries like the Riverside County Law Library, who's hosting this event, our law enforcement agencies, things that have a tangible impact on our daily lives. So I think it just goes a long way to keep in mind personally and encouraging others, friends, colleagues, and family, the value of local election participation.
Thank you. And then what do you all think is most rewarding about being involved in local politics?
For me, it was being a bridge and being an unfiltered bridge. And when I say that, at the moment, we question everything. We question where we open up Twitter or X, it's called X now. So we question everything we see on there. We question everything we see on YouTube. Any videos, has it been doctored? Has it been tailored? And in 2022, we did a town hall, but it was a town hall for a judicial candidates. It was judicial meet the candidates. And it was held by a Poly, the HBAIE, and RT Fields. And at that town hall, we had candidates who were running for judicial appointment, the judicial election, sorry, and they were able to give their platform. So being a part of that felt very, very fortunate. I felt very lucky. And being someone who I'm part of millions that question everything that we hear, being the actual person that helped set that up and knowing that when I did it, it was in good faith. It was wanting to inform the public. There was no ulterior motives. Being able to be that person and know that we helped set something up that was genuinely and everything for the public and for a community was beautiful. And being involved in the community is just being fortunate. Not like Daniela said, like we're part of a small population of attorneys, and being an attorney and being involved in the community is just a blessing. Sometimes we forget how big of an impact we can make on a person. All of us could remember a moment in time where somebody said one sentence or spent a conversation with us that stuck with us for 20 years. For me, it's happened to me. And if I told you, I'm going to give you 100, 200 opportunities to make a change in somebody's life, in my opinion, I feel like as a people, as a community, we care about each other. And I would hope, and to be honest, I know that our community, if we tell them that, be involved and you will change somebody's life, I think the majority of us would take that chance. So being involved in the community is just a beautiful thing that I try to appreciate every day.
If I can piggyback on something that Alex said, I think that the other great opportunity in participating in your community and in local politics is I think that it's too easy because of social media, because of the way the news is now, no matter which news outlet you watch, because of the dialogue that goes on in a lot of the written news that I see, that it's too easy to make other people villains. And what I love about being involved in the community and being involved in local politics is I think it gives you the opportunity to see that people are not the villains that people make them out to be. And I feel this really intensely as a judge because, I've worked with a lot of judges. Now, I'm going to be candid. Never met or worked with anybody who's on the United States Supreme Court, so I have no personal knowledge when it comes to how they act. But I read news articles, and the first thing that I read in many news articles is that this judge is a Democrat, or this judge is a Republican, or this judge was appointed by this president, or this judge was appointed by that governor. And I can tell you that I was a judge for 13 years. For 10 years, I had some contact because I was involved in the training of every new judge that came into the state of California, whether appointed or elected, for 10 years. And I met Republicans, I met Democrats, I met people who were neither. I met judges who were appointed by Republicans. I met judges who were appointed by Democrats. And I met judges who were elected in nonpartisan elections. And I can tell you that in our conversations about the law, about what the right decision was, we never talked about politics. We never talked about parties. We may have had differing views on what the right thing to do was, but for most of the judges, and almost to a person that I dealt with on a daily basis, it was, what's the right thing to do? And I think that what local politics gives us the opportunity to do is, I think if you meet people who are working towards something good, whether it's campaigning for others or working for a ballot measure or campaigning for a particular candidate, I think what you'll find is that at their core, most of us and most of the people we know want things that are similar. We see different ways to get there. And then there are some people who are really unlike us. But I think that what the national narrative drives increases division. And I think what local politics gives us the opportunity to do is to see the commonalities and to see where we really are a lot more alike than we are different. Because once we sit down and have a meal with somebody or have a conversation with somebody, it's different than reading their tweets or watching them on television.
Thank you, Judge Lucky. Our next question is, what measures can the legal community take to educate or give back to the public?
I could jump in. So we have amazing organizations here in the Inland Empire: ICLS, IELA, APOLI, HBIE, RT Fields, and to be frank, we're growing. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful community of attorneys. It's a community that we care about each other. So we have these organizations that are already set up that we as attorneys could join up and give back. I know Daniela has been involved in IELA. Also, we could do, I know Sharon Ramirez is in the office of Kenny Ramirez, the civil law firm. They have like YouTube videos. So that could be something else that you could do. And my biggest thing is we sometimes forget that what we do is fun and people love to see it. And just this past year, we did the reenactment of the Harada trial, and Judge Lucky was part of that. And I do a quick shout out to, it was part of the BOTA, and it was part of the James Otis lecture. And we had Judge Lucky that was part of it, Eugene Kim, Neil Okazaki, Robin Lewis, Trish Law, Diane Wiseman, Judge Pacheco, John Lowenthal, just amazing, amazing, amazing attorneys in our community. And these are attorneys that are super busy. Like, I think I'm busy, but these attorneys are just doing fantastic, amazing things. And they took an entire morning of their time to come to the courthouse and reenact this big trial. And these are things that we could do, and that we could do these things with the community, because if we set up these events and we teach them about the law, the majority of people are going to want to come. And before I forget, and just this year, they're going to rename the Highland Elementary School to the Harada Elementary School. So that's happening, I believe, next month. Another thing we could do as legal professionals is go be part of a bill. One of my friends, the DDA, I was texting her yesterday. She's up in Sacramento right now. She sent me a picture of her arguing a bill. So that's something, if you find something you're passionate about, you find something that you care about, talk to the right people and get involved. And you could try to help out the population that the bill is trying to protect.
Yes, like Alex said, IALA, which is the Inland Empire Latino Lawyers Association, it's amazing to give back to them. Unfortunately, I had to step back because a lot of my clients, there was a lot of conflict of interest, and a lot of my clients and opposing parties were dealing with them. But I think it goes to say that as an attorney, just talking to your clients and trying to really make a difference that way. I mean, for me, myself, I try to give free consultations, and my consultations can last as quick as 10 minutes to 30 minutes, but I really just love to educate people on the law and guiding them, because I think that is what true democracy is knowing your rights and acting on them.
For me, it once again starts locally. I'm a part of the Barristers, which is a group of young or newly licensed attorneys. We meet for social events, attend community events, and just generally have a fun time with each other. I've made a ton of friends through Barristers. Just here today, we have Alex, who's one of our panelists, Sharon, who played a huge role in organizing this event today. Even Daniela, I think we met at like a Christmas wrapping event for the community. Judge Lucky, among others, who is very involved in the Barristers. I know Judge Lucky dedicates his time to provide legal seminars and share some knowledge on his aspects being a judge. So I encourage anyone who's considering the legal field or just interested in being involved in the legal community to attend something like the Barristers event or the other bar associations, which Alex and Daniela mentioned. If anybody needs my contact information, I'm happy to provide that. I'm not sure if the panel's providing that in any case, but just generally, there's a lot of opportunities. And again, for the Barristers, it's just about having fun and making connections. And I think that's it's been a very great experience for me. And I think it would be a great experience for anybody else interested in something like that.
And then just find something you love to do, something you care about. Right now, I'm also part of Project Graduate, where you become an educational representative. And that's something I'm passionate about because I was able to be there for a young little dude. So it could be that. It doesn't have to be Project Graduate. It doesn't have to be ICLS. It doesn't have to be IELA. Find something you like. And maybe there's not an organization for it. Maybe you be the one to create it. You be the person to make that change. Just because there isn't an org for it doesn't mean that there isn't a group of people that share your like-minded mind. So find something you care about, get involved. I know we're all busy, but there's always time.
Or even being a mentor, right? I think that's so important. And this is what I tell a lot of aspiring attorneys. I say, hey, just go on Yelp, go on Google, find an attorney and say, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I meet you? Can I just pick their brain? You don't know how you can impact someone's life and really put them on the trajectory of becoming an attorney and making that change.
Thank you all. And I'm sure that Judge Lucky would also attest a great way to give back that he's done that I sincerely appreciate is being the president of the RCL Library Board. So that's an excellent way that he gave back to the community. My last question for all of you is, how does being a lawyer allow you to protect the individual rights of your clients in the community?
I'll jump in there. It's for me, it's a given. It's a given, and at least in the criminal realm, it's a demand. At least a demand I have to myself. Like my purpose is to serve the client, and I'm hand in hand with him. I'm not in front of him. I'm not behind him. He's right there next to me, and we're arm in arm. And when you have that understanding, you understand that their voice, it may not be as loud as yours, but their voice is yours. And you talk together, you move together, and the only way you get there is by learning who they are. With my clients, I want to find out, where are you from? Where were you born? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your criminal history. Tell me about your mental health history, your substance abuse history. Tell me about you. And in the beginning, they're not going to want to share everything. But over time, if you show them that you're not above them, you're eye to eye, they will share. Because most of the clients, even the private clients who hire, they may be paying you thousands and thousands of dollars, but they still are very skeptical of our profession Just as we are when we take our car to the mechanic and they tell us something wrong, it's just like, if you say so. And they're the same way. They're very skeptical, especially with everything in the news. So you have to show them that you care. And the minute you care and they see you care and you argue in court, I feel that when judges see that, I feel like judges look at you in the eye, and if they see your eyes and they see how much your client means to you and how much you care, and that could be shown by how much research you've done, all the details you know, it just, your argument is stronger. And they deserve that. And that's an easy, that for me, that's a given. That's something they deserve. And as legal professionals, it's something that we should demand of ourselves.
I'll piggyback on Alex again. Sorry, Alex, I keep on jumping on your back. But one of the things that I used to tell people when I was a lawyer, and I think this is true of being a judge as well, is that there are very few jobs that I know of, other than being a lawyer, where the job description is to seek truth and do justice. There are lots of other jobs in the world, and they're great jobs. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with them. But I'll tell you, it fills me with joy when I think about, well, how do I describe what I do? I seek truth and I do justice. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I get it right all the time, but I'm saying that that's the guiding principle of what great lawyers and judges do. And I'm aware that maybe there are some that are not guided by that principle. And let's set those aside for right now, because I'm sure that there are people who are not good at other professions as well. But I think what my frustration has been as an attorney and as a judge is, again, on a local level, when I talk to lawyers at barristers like these folks, when I talk to lawyers at bar associations, when I talk to many lawyers in my courtroom, when I talk to judges at judicial conferences, it is wonderful and inspiring to be around people who take their oath to uphold justice so strongly, so to their cores. And I think that's an inspiring way to live life. And that's why I encourage people who are interested in making a change through being a lawyer to do so.
It's also super cool being in court and just like knowing everything, and then just like, I know the case, I know my client, let's go. So it's fun too. And
For me personally, I represent people that are injured, accidents, slip and fall, motor vehicle accidents, whatever the case is. But I think oftentimes we forget that we're attorneys, but we're called counselors. And we're dealing with real people with real emotions. For example, I have a client, husband hit by a semi truck. She will never see him again, and dealing with that is something that in law school you might not think about, that you are a counselor and you have to provide possibly, you have to be an ear to someone and be someone that can help them through this time. And I think, sometimes we may forget that, but and then to Judge Lucky's point, seeking truth and justice, my role is to do everything in my ability to make sure that this particular case is seen through. And there's people that would like my client to go away and for it to not be a problem for them, and it's not like it's criminal conduct or anything like that, but someone made a mistake. And, the goal of our justice system, at least in civil levels, to make someone whole, for tort claims. So for me, I think just being a counselor, being an ear for someone to perhaps get things off their chest. And I think that's really important to provide that to our clients.
I agree with what Nolan said. Sometimes I feel like I'm a counselor and a priest at the same time. I say, whatever you tell me, it goes to the grave with me and with you, right? So I think it's really about empathy with clients, especially clients such as my clients that are going through divorce or a custody battle. These are very sensitive and emotional topics. And that's why I have tissue on me at all times, because I know I'm gonna be their shoulder to cry on. But at the same time, I'm going to be a zealous advocate for them and ensure that I get the best possible outcome for them and help them in finding their voice, because sometimes, democracy, it starts at home, right? And I think that there's people that are living in authoritarian type of environments, and just getting them those freedoms that they so likely they need and they deserve.
Thank you for all of those remarks. If no one has anything else that they would like to add on democracy, I would prepare my closing statements. So does anyone have anything else that they want to share about today's Law Day theme of Voices of Democracy?
No, just thanks for the opportunity.
Same saying, go vote, go get involved, town hall, barristers, law organizations, anything you can, you make one person, you reach one person, that's beautiful.
I think just having your voice be heard, your voice is loud, wear it proud, and vote.
Thank you. With that, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time to celebrate Law Day with the Riverside County Law Library. A shout out to our panelists, Nolan, Daniela, and Alex, and our keynote speaker, the Honorable John Jackson Lucky. This panel discussion will be available to view anytime on our RCLL YouTube channel at RC Law Lib. And thank you again for taking the time to watch this and learn about the importance of Law Day and its theme, Voices of Democracy. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.